Thanks for helping out.
Well, listen, thank you.
Sure.
It's going to be a lot more work for you than it is for me.
Well.
but it's good work for Angels Depot.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
Oh, gosh. Many things since we last spoke. We've kind of... We moved residence. We're living now in the Tampa Bay area, and Florida's a nice part of the world. It's, a lot different than California with its humidity and its tropical kind of vibe and all that sort of thing. But we love it a lot here. And just I've got a great band these days. It's a totally different band than the last event at the Escondido Center for the Performing Arts. But... great guys, all music people. They all teach, and they're all musically involved. That's what they do, for their lives and things. So we all come from kind of the same roots. Though they're more accomplished as musicians, they're good readers and writers and teachers and things. I'm not really a great reader. I can read chart, symbols and things better than I can read the note values. I'm just not quick at it anymore. But I continue to study the guitar and learn something about it. And certainly over the last 10 years, I've learned an awful lot about the music of my folks era, which is kind of that. I don't know. It's what's the word I want? It's sort of. It's sort of like a jazz world, but, the songs were such beautiful, standard kind of things, and it's what the jazz world kind of tries to learn, the 1-6-2-5s and different sort of things. So I've been kind of doing that, and, we have a nice home here. We do a lot of landscaping, palm trees forever here, so I'm always digging in the dirt. And
Are they still rationing water? I know my mom lives in Fort Myers.
Oh, does she? We were just down there last weekend.
Yeah, see, I was down there 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
But, they're rationing water there. Now, here, of course, it hasn't rained in half a year.
Yeah, well, we had, I think, a decent rainy season, but they seem to, down here, once they get the water table back up, they seem to want to try to save it and keep it that way. Because it's funny, when we're not in rainy season, it's almost like a drought. It can just not rain, and then of course everybody wants to water all their tropical things.
Oh yeah,
the water table goes way down, but I don't know. They call themselves in a ration mode, but sometimes you have to cheat because you'd rather pay the higher water bill than have to go through paying for dead trees, removal and all that kind of stuff.
Our lawn is the color of sandpaper.
Oh, my goodness.
So that's another story.
Yeah, I know.
Part of that has to do with the economy, too.
Yeah, oh, sure.
If the family wants to eat, great. If the Grants wants to eat, well, you may have to wait a little bit.
Yeah, what have you been doing in the last, how did you get to the Walrus?
It was waiting for me.
Oh, good.
It's just one of those things. Fortunes in radio go one way, and the company I was working for decided to downsize. So, actually, I spent 9 months with the newspaper. They tried an online radio station type thing.
Kidding.
And at one point they said, well, we're not going to do this anymore, which is their prerogative.
Oh, sure.
And it was the day before that I got a call from the people here. Said, we're taking our FM radio station and we're going to put some real music on it. You want to be part of it?
Well, that's nice.
And here I was.
Nice to hear them put it that way because, when I run into my peers, the guys in the groups, the Gary Lewises and the Buckinghams and those people, they're always saying, we're losing the music to a great degree, with satellite and with all the online stuff, and the radio stations are getting too automated and all that kind of stuff, so...
Well, with us, it's just the opposite. It's coming back, and in this economy, everybody says, well, businesses are downsizing all over the place. Well, ours just put on a new radio station.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's 60s and 70s music. It's the stuff that people love. The response has been incredible, and we continue to grow.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do it right. By the way, Gary Lewis's story is rather interesting because he now lives about 3 blocks from where I grew up.
In
Rochester.
In Rochester, right?
Yeah, he met his current wife. He met her, I guess, on one of the tours, and he decided to settle down there.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah, well, we've known Gary and Donna for some time. We're not close as friends, but we're close as peers. And whenever we work together, it's always like a little homecoming.
Sure,
'cause
good guy.
Yeah, Gary's a great guy.
Really good guy. Of course, his dad has a boat down here in San Diego, and
oh, sure,
he's there a lot.
Yeah,
and who wouldn't be, especially to get out of the rat race of L.A. But enough on that. Gary Puckett was interested in the Civil War. Is that the story? Is that where the Union Gap came
that
from?
was a part of it, sure. In those days, do you remember how, of course you remember, how would I say, do you remember? You remember how records were released in a little brown envelope,
sure,
or red envelope, or maybe whatever. But those little brown or red envelopes were not very telling about the records,
right,
or about the intent and purpose of the group, And I was thinking about that when the Union Gap was formed and when we were about to be able to release a record, and I said, we have to look different. We've got to have a great sound, but we also need to look different than all those people out there that are following everybody that's wearing the tie-dyes and the velvets and the fringes and the hip huggers and the bell-bottoms and you can remember the garb, and I just kept saying, what can we do to set us apart? And one day we were working actually in Seattle. The group had a working title called Gary and the Remarkables, and I knew that was a silly title, but I also knew that it was a working title and that I would come up with, somehow I would be given the idea. It would come to me, what it was going to be. And one day, just because I had this interest in the Civil War period in time, in fact, I was always very fascinated with the photos of that period in time. The man's name is skipping my mind. Brady, I think, was his name. He was a photographer that, gave us the still life images of the Civil War, and I just used to look at those pictures and kind of read up on the history of it, and it would fascinate me that you could actually see these people who lived 100 years prior and who, were fighting for a cause, were fighting whatever that cause was. And, of course, in the North, it was, freedom for all mankind. And I just said, that's a great idea. It could set us apart if we wore a soldier outfit. And I chose the Union. I was born in Minnesota in the North. I grew up in Washington in the North. I liked blue. I thought it was a positive thing. It's what split the states. It's what brought them back together. I rationalized a lot of stuff, but that gave me the intent and the purpose, of the image of this new group that ultimately was to be called Gary Puckett and the Union Gap. And I didn't even start it out that way. It was just called the Union Gap.
Right.
Yeah.
They put your name in front.
Well, what does that mean? And I would say, what does Rolling Stones mean? What does anything really mean? It's a name and helps give identity. And I was very fortunate to have a huge hit with Woman, Woman, Have You Got Cheating on Your Mind? And the record company, they looked carefully at it and they said, this doesn't sound like a group. It doesn't sound like a band. It sounds like a singer with an orchestration. And I think that we ought to give Gary some marquee value. So on Young Girl, the next release, which also had a picture of us on that little record sleeve,
right.
They put Gary Puckett, they put Union Gap featuring Gary. No, they did that in the first record, didn't they?
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
I'm losing my own history here.
That's all right.
And they just said, yes, let's call it the Union Gap featuring Gary Puckett on Woman, Woman. Then, on the second record, they said, we're going to call this Gary Puckett and the Union Gap. And years later, I have to have gratitude for the record company decision to do that because it's given me and my name marquee value, which has helped me along the way as well.